So the average American eats fast food 4 times a week. And Chipotle is one of the fastest growing chains in the country. Founder Steve Ells set out to offer fast food with what we've been talking about today, with a conscience.
I opened the first Chipotle in 1993 with the idea that just because it's fast doesn't mean it has to be a fast food experience.
Just cheese.
At the height of the lunch rush, it's all hands on deck. And the grill is filled with chicken and steak, and we're sauteing vegetables and cooking beans, and we're mixing batches of rice. I think fast food to most people means cheap, highly processed, not good for you, not great quality. At Chipotle, it's just the opposite. Everything at Chipotle is fresh, never frozen, with the exception of corn. 45% or so of our beans are now organic. We buy produce from local family farmers in the months when it's available. That really contributes to the freshness and the nutritiousness of the food. We serve more naturally raised meat than any other restaurant company in the country. 100% of our chicken is naturally raised. 100% of our pork is naturally raised, and a little more than 60% of our beef now.
I get the chicken or I get the hard tacos with the vinaigrette. Excellent.
This year, Chipotle will serve about 70 million pounds of meat.
It's really important to serve chicken that has never been given antibiotics and pork that's never been given antibiotics or growth hormones and is allowed to be outside and free-ranging. These make for better tasting meats and better for the environment. We think access to sustainably raised food shouldn't be a luxury. It should be an everyday occurrence.
So Steve Ells, congratulations, really. We need more of you. We need more of you. So, you know, I've seen these Chipotle restaurants, but I had no idea that that's what
You'll have to stop now.
I think I will. Chipotle serves 700,000 people a day, and last year did more than $1 billion in sales. And you told my producers that you wanted to change the way Americans think about fast food, because what we've been seeing and talking about and what most people know is that, you know, it's not as nutritious as we would want it to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, when I started the first restaurant, I wanted to
In 93?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure everything was fresh. And I had just gotten out of cooking school to learn to be a chef, and I worked at this fancy restaurant. And so the first Chipotle was in order to provide seed money for my fancy restaurant.
That you were going to do.
Right, right. And so I opened the Chipotle, and it was really, really busy. Everything was fresh. I was back in the kitchen cooking everything from scratch. I mean, when we made batches of beans, I was toasting the cumin seeds and grinding them in a mortar of pestle and picking oregano off the stems and chopping them, and just like all these little details that's never in fast food, but we served it really, really fast. And so I decided, because of the success of the first restaurant, I said, I'll open one more, and then one more. And then there were a lot of them all of a sudden. And again, it was always based on fresh.
How do you keep the standard, though?
We only do a few things, but we do them really, really well. And so we teach people how to cook from scratch. So if you go into a typical fast food place, they're not necessarily cooking. We have cutting boards and knives and pots and pans and whisks. And they go in and they grab real food and they cook.
So where did this idea, or when did you start, or did you start this immediately, the idea of food with a conscience?
At the beginning, it was just about freshness. And then, I started to get curious about where the food came from. And the first experience that I had was with the pork. I was looking for a new pork supplier. And so I read this article about some farmers up in Iowa under the name Nyman Ranch who were raising pigs outdoors or in deeply bedded pens in the winter and never giving them antibiotics or growth hormones. And so I got some samples of this pork, and it was awesome. I mean, it tasted so much better than the stuff I was using.
But didn't it cost you so much more?
It did, but I said, well, what about the other stuff? And they said, well, that's raised in confinement. And so I went and I saw that. I saw what that meant. And it really makes you sad. And I knew that I didn't want my success or the success of Chipotle to be based on that kind of exploitation. So we switched to all of this outdoor raised pork.
But this is the question, Michael, is it humanly possible to feed all the people we need to feed in the world if all the animals are going to be outdoors?
Well, we probably wouldn't eat as much meat as we do now. We eat a kind of obscene amount of meat, 200 pounds per person per year. And if all the animals were outdoors, we would probably eat a little bit less meat. But it would be a much better product. It's really that trade-off between quality and quantity.
We will be back in a moment with a special offer for you to see. Food Inc.